All right, my friends, welcome back to All Cars. I am John, and today I want to introduce you to the 1987-1988 Pontiac Pursuit. This was a running concept test bed technology prototype that GM was running back in the late 80s, and I've never heard of it before literally about 12 hours ago. And I'm absolutely blown away that the fact that General Motors was fully 12 to 25 years ahead in terms of the technology they were looking at that became very common later on. And today, I want to introduce you to it. All right, my friends, welcome back. I'm super excited about this. As you know, I love the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and rightfully most of the time, we are really down on General Motors. They managed to squander an incredible lead, their management mistakes, and yeah, they started Hummer and Saturn and bought Saab and then ran everything into the ground. But it's easy to forget, for all of their struggles, just how big they were and how much they could invest in future technology. Now, I don't know how I never saw the Pursuit. I don't remember an article about it. I don't remember anything about it, but YouTube actually recommended to me an old Motor Week video, which I'm going to heavily reference here because it seems to be the only video about this car. I found a few other articles, but they all seem to reference the Motor Week video. It's really fascinating stuff. Now, first off, because we're going back to the 80s, we're going to pop the collar. But let's take a look at it here. So the first thing is, it's a super sleek design, and they've got those wheel covers on it, obviously to reduce drag, get better fuel efficiency. But it's interesting from the outside to look at it because you can see a little bit of what became the EV1 in here. That horizontal headlight, you can see that kind of come up later in the, Pontiac Grand Prix. I've read a few comments on forums also. People were like, that looks like a Saturn. It's all got some of these elements in it, so they actually took some styling from it as well. But it's the technology that's inside that really gets me excited. Now, the first is, you've got to talk about the steering wheel. While it's a hideously ugly thing that looks like a PlayStation controller, the first thing to note is it's electric. There is no traditional steering column connecting your yoke here to the wheels. It's all electric, and this thing had a 180-degree lock-to-lock. This to this. That was it. And the reviewer actually said there's no sense of road feel at all, so you really don't know where the wheels are pointing, and it's so quick. But you know what? This idea, this drive-by-wire idea, Infiniti finally did it in 2014. And as a matter of fact, that idea of electric steering is what makes a lot of the driver's aids on our cars available. When the new technology where it detects you're out of the lane and it bumps you back over, well, that's electric steering. GM was thinking about it in 87, 88. And I keep saying that because I've seen both 87 and 88 attributed to this concept. Number two is it had four-wheel steering. And so you can see it here in part of this Motor Week vehicle as they go around the cones. The back and front wheels both turn. This is not horribly unusual. You certainly saw it in some Japanese cars, for example, but it's cool that GM was looking at it. Customizable dashboard, all controlled up here from the steering wheel. You know what? We take that for granted these days. And digital displays, we take that for granted these days. I'm glad they didn't go with a yoke later on, but the steering wheel, let's face it, it is kind of cool. And this thing did have back seats, and they put small TVs in the headrests of the front seat so backseat passengers could watch TVs. You could see this in any minivan and many sport utilities these days. They had a built-in child safety seat, a feature which later came up in the GM Dustbuster minivans. I believe Dodge did it in their minivans as well, and then Volvo, they offered it in their cars. They had a primitive version of GPS before GPS ever existed. They wanted to use satellites and get data down into the car to show you weather and other items like this. Again, another technology that really is coming about today and coming into its own, where I can pull up navigation on my phone through Apple CarPlay and have weather and road closures and everything else. GM was thinking about this decades ago. In terms of the powertrain, the only thing that would make this more complete for me is if it had a hybrid system. And unfortunately it doesn't. It has a 2-liter turbocharged engine driving the front wheels, which still is a little prescient because that's pretty much the powertrain you see in almost everything these days. A small 4-cylinder that's turbocharged. And because it was Pontiac, this thing actually still went through a manual transmission. And finally, there's a chance you may have seen this vehicle at one point in your life if you weren't familiar with it before, because it did have a small piece in the background of one scene in the second Back to the Future movie. So I know this is a short video, guys, but I'm a little blown away. It's easy for me to look back at the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and see GM as just dead. You know, I've said many times they couldn't do everything right at the same time. That old platform with a new engine, or a new platform with an old engine, and you know, they were still using 3 speeds when other people moved on to 4 speeds. And in addition to the management missteps and sometimes shoddy build quality, bad materials that wore out inside. But sometimes it's nice to go back and remember just what a behemoth GM was and just how forward-looking they really were. Although somehow between concept and what gets out to the customer, it all got lost. But this is exciting to look at because GM was way ahead of the curve, and it's pretty cool to see. I will make one final note here. When I was doing a search for this, I found out that there was a Pontiac Pursuit up in the Canadian market. So if you're from Canada, welcome. Thank you for being here. And that was a version of the G5. Not a terribly exciting car by itself, and it lost a lot of what Pontiac seemed to be thinking of back in the day. Thanks for being here, guys. Let me know a comment below.